What's up, guys? It's your man KP67's coming back again. Yes, that's right, 2 videos in a day because I fell behind with the Sith, so I had to get the Sith out before this one. But this is the Imperial Academy video that I'm putting out today. And, you know, like I said, we're almost done with the Empire here. And, let's see here. Today, we're going to be covering everybody's favorite character that came out last October, the TIE Fighter pilot in this case. So, the TIE Fighter pilot is an Empire attacker, obviously, and since he's an attacker, he's got a good amount of agility, a good amount of strength, and tactics. Don't really care about tactics, that's fine. So he's got a good amount of physical damage, critical rating, and otherwise his health and armor, nothing to write home about. As you can see here, like with maxed and, you know, kind of rando modding in this case, he's still pretty squishy, about 50k estimated health and protection here. He's not super fast right now. I'm just slowly just remodding my Empire characters around, and I have to get some more crit damage mods because I need more than just Empire these days. So he's sitting at a slow 231. I know you're just probably thinking like, that's slow? That's not slow, but you know, for TFP, it is kind of slow. Critical damage I got maxed right out, 216%, potency, a good 73-ish%, yeah, 73% we'll say. His physical damage is pretty nice, sitting at about 3,300. You know, if you could get him to 3,500, that would be pretty sweet. His physical critical chance is nice and high, 47% in this case. Dream would be obviously to get it to 50%, but you know, that's neither here nor there. His armor got a lot better with the post gear 12 gear, but he's still relatively squishy. He can take a few hits now, absolutely, but I wouldn't call him a tank. You know, just saying out there. And special, nobody cares. So, with respect to his farm location, surprise, he's in the Cantina store, but luckily he's not in the expensive nodes, which is all I feel like I've been talking about lately. He is in Cantina 4B on a 10 energy node, so he's a relatively easier farm when you're going the free-to-play route or you're spending refreshes on a lot of Cantina energy. You should be able to get him up pretty quickly, and that's a pretty big bonus because in the mid-game to getting to endgame, he's a very, very integral part of any Empire team that you'd want to be able to run just because of how much damage he does. Which, of course, ties back to his gear. Now, TIE Fighter pilot's gear, since he's an attacker, isn't the worst in the world. He needs 4 hyposyringes, he needs 4 stun cuffs. I know the stun cuffs are kind of annoying, but besides that, he's otherwise pretty okay with regards to a lot of the bad purples that most people get. You know, he only needs 2 Carbantes, he only needs like 2 of the Mark IV Cheedak comlinks, which go hand in hand with stun cuffs. Like, it's pretty nice to be able to gear the TIE Fighter pilot. He's not the worst gear in the world, and he can be annoying, especially the Mark IV Cheedaks, but overall, like, he's not a very hard gear. You should be able to gear him out pretty quickly if that's who you're focusing on, and you know, if you like him as an attacker. So he definitely plays a role, and his gearing is definitely worth it in my eyes. Speaking of worth it, we're going to get into his abilities here. So when you look at his first ability here, Targeting Computer. Deal physical damage to the target enemy and deal 35% more damage for each enemy suffering a debuff. Inflict tenacity down for 2 turns on a critical hit. So not only does he inflict tenacity down, which is, barring the Sith raid, one of the most important debuffs you could possibly have in this game, tenacity down. I think they need to rework tenacity up and tenacity down to not be like stupid ridiculous, like plus 999,999% of each or minus. But the key here is that his basic will do 35% more damage for each enemy suffering a debuff. So I'm not going to sit here and pretend to do math off the top of my head. I want to say it is like 175% more damage, I think 175% more damage, assuming all 5 of your opposition are debuffed. So he is going to do a truckload of damage when he hits, which is insane. Going into his first and only special here, we have TIE Strike. Deal physical damage to all enemies with an 80% chance to inflict buff immunity for 2 turns. Keep in mind that this buff immunity is applied to everybody across the board, so you could get 1, 2, 5 people getting buff immunity. Generally speaking, you'll probably be sitting around 3 or 4 that usually get buff immunity, assuming you get good RNG, and he inflicts ability block on the primary target for 1 turn. This is why the TIE Fighter pilot was such a meta character when he was first released, because of his high base speed. As a base speed, he has about 170, which is basically outspeeding almost every character out there. There's a couple obvious exceptions, but you know, through and through, he is going to be going first in most instances. Again, few instances, especially Darth Vader, with Darth Vader's unique bonuses that he gets. So when he was first released, he was very, very fast. People modded him fast so that way they could get that opening ability block on somebody. And on offense, it was great to drop an ability block on someone who could possibly tenacity up, such as, guess who? Rex. So a lot of good utility in this, as well as the fact that he can block a lot of tanks off as well. He's a very, very useful character there. And then finally, we get into his unique here, Evasive Maneuvers. At the end of each of these turns, for each debuffed enemy, okay, each one, TIE Fighter Pilot gains 10% turn meter and a 35% chance to gain foresight for a turn. So if everybody's debuffed, again, 5 people, right? That means at the end of his turn, he is automatically going to get 50% turn meter, 10 times 5 is 50, and for each instance, he will have a 35% chance to gain foresight for 1 turn. So that means each person, you get 5 tries towards getting foresight in that case. It doesn't mean 35 times 5 in this case. It's not saying that. It's saying 35%, 35%, 35%, 35%, 35%. But because there are 5 of them, I feel like that increases your chances. So foresight will pop up here and there, and it's very useful to at least keep the TIE Fighter pilot protected pretty well. It also helps against his squishiness, so that's another thing to consider as well. So after going through his abilities here, we're going to go over his mods. As you can see here, I have prototypical attacker mods, 4 critical damage, 2 critical chance. I've got speed on the arrow, I've got critical damage on the triangle, and I've got offense on the cross. He really doesn't need the extra potency. As you saw, when you max him out, he's going to be sitting at, just with potency secondaries, he's sitting at, you know, close to 80%. He really doesn't need the extra 24% from a primary cross. So if you want him to be a little bit more protected, you can go protection, but if you want him to hit even harder, you go offense, plain and simple. Obviously protection on the circle, and prototypical attacker secondaries you're gunning for, offense, critical chance, speed, and protection, just to keep him alive a little bit longer in case things go south for you. So, with respect to TIE Fighter Pilot's uses, TIE Fighter Pilot obviously has his own ship, the TIE Fighter. This is probably the most meta ship you could possibly get, as well as the fact that he has an insane amount of dodge. He has a 50% dodge rate at baseline, and then looking at his unique here, he gains 15% turn meter to the allied capital ship whenever the TIE Fighter evades an attack. And this effect is doubled for Empire capital ships. So because of his high dodge rate, anytime he dodges a shot, your capital ship, be it the Executrix or the Chimera, will be gaining 30% turn meter. So it's really good at helping your capital ship get the upper hand and start speeding up past your enemy. Or, because it's RNG, it could screw you pretty bad too. But outside of ships, the TIE Fighter still is, a very useful offensive character just because of how much damage he can put out. He's got a lot of good control between the buff immunity and the ability block. It's just, again, you know, when you look at the current meta, for instance, he can play a pretty useful role, especially with Emperor Palpatine lead, because when he applies all those debuffs everywhere, he gains a ton of turn meter, and then obviously he also gets turn meter at the end of his turn as well, which means that he can go essentially back to back if he just lands a few debuffs, which is like really honestly amazing when you think about it. He also hits like a truck, so as long as you've got him under someone who can put a lot of debuffs, Tarkin, Darth Vader's Zeta leadership, you know, like himself, anybody who can put down a lot of debuffs and keep those debuffs up, your TIE Fighter pilot will punch holes through trucks. Obviously, if your opponent has a Rex and that Rex gets tenacity up, you have just severely neutered the TIE fighter pilot quite a bit. And, you know, in an arena team, he's fun to use, but honestly, I don't think he's the best for arena currently, especially at the top end. Obviously, if you're a little on the lower end, like let's say you're below the top 50, between, I don't know, we'll say 200 to 50, I'm sure he's got a lot of good usage there. So he can definitely help you climb, and when you get towards the end game arena, you will have to change some things around, but he still has plenty of good use in just wrecking house for the Empire. Alright guys, so that concludes my review. Overall, especially if you're a beginning player, get the TIE Fighter pilot, but slowly consider trying to slowly phase him out of a fully developed endgame arena team. He will still have his uses. I still use him all the time, honestly. But, you know, overall, I would say that, like, you know, he's a solid A character, you know. Alright, so that officially concludes it now. If you liked the video, please leave a like. If you have any comments to give, please go ahead, leave them down below. I do get back to my comments. And if you liked the video and you want to see more videos, please consider subscribing. Thank you very much. And with that, have a good day, guys.